project that they're ready to launch at any time. You can launch a crowdfunding project with 3 pages, a title and a description. You don't even need a cover. 3 interior pages. They don't even have to be in order. Just 3 random pages. Every writer should have a crowdfunding project right there in the Pez dispenser, just ready to come out when they need it. So this person was trying to drum up work. And number one, it's an SJW, so the thread went on forever. And it was basically them saying, like, I'm a good person. I'm an activist. I care about people. I don't give a fuck. Art is not a good person contest. I don't care if you're a good person. It's actually probably a problem if you are. Because if you're a good person, you're probably also boring, which makes you a bad writer. You go through all of the great artists and writers, and they're pieces of shit. I read a biography of Picasso. I wanted to go back in time to slap the shit out of him. He is literally an awful person, as is most great artists. Saying that you're a good person, first of all, it's just fucking weird. I would just be like, okay, this person's got like an ego. Why don't you have an ego about writing some amazing stories that sell really well? I'm an activist. I care about people. I'm a good person. Tell me you're a sociopath without telling me you're a sociopath. It's a visual medium. Visual. And if you're some friendless weirdo who doesn't understand how to bond with people and how to advertise with people and how to get people to actually like things, nobody looks for metaphysical sci-fi adventures. Nobody. Nobody at all. Just put adventure and some good art. Consider shutting the fuck up. If you don't have anything interesting and compelling to say, if your way of selling your book is just basically you bragging about what a good person you are, just shut up. Just find a good artist, come up with something compelling and interesting and exciting for them to draw, not some naff retro take on sci-fi that would have been considered passe 25 years ago. At some point, this stuff is really simple. Like, I look at some of these crowdfunding campaigns. Sean Gordon Murphy, everyone assumed he was going to do some badass, vigilante driving a cool car, and then he did some freaking wish book, never-ending story YA bullshit, and everyone's like, I don't. The funny thing is, I actually backed it because I like Sean Gordon Murphy's work, and then I canceled. But for some reason, you still get the updates like forever. If he wants to swing around and go for round 2 and make a book that people actually want, I am very excited about that. At some point, you need to be able to gauge how you connect with people. Maybe just shut up and show the art. That art for Human Target is career best work by Greg Smallwood. And all anyone remembers right now is Tom King's The Heart Wants What It Wants Hallmark movie ad copy. So anyway, thanks for watching. Knife Hand Blind Spot, Rock and Roll Ninja graphic novel. Links are in the description. And I'm gonna get back to packing these goodie bags for Expendables Go to Hell. Bye.
President Biden's agenda is on the brink of a catastrophic failure, and it could nuke his entire presidency. The so-called uniter-in-chief struggling to unite his own party in order to pass a massive $3.5 trillion tax and grab scheme that's going to fundamentally transform the entire country for decades. Biden and Bernie Sanders are trying to pass this massive spending plan, but moderates are saying, hey, let's pump the brakes. And White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki is doing her best to say everything is just fine.
Our objective here is to work towards unity, work towards an agreement. That's in process. We're not there yet, but we're working on it. Well, I would tell you that I think there's a fair number of people who might consider themselves quite progressive in this administration. The role the president is playing is working to get 50 votes in the Senate. That's a role it sounds like they're happy to have him play. We'll see. The day is young. I'll just keep saying that. That's the theme of the day.
And Democrats are either terrible at math or think the American people are too stupid by repeating the claim that spending $3.5 trillion will actually cost nothing.
It is zero price tag on the debt. We're going to pay for everything we spend.
This is a $0 bill.
Of the investments that were proposed, including tax cuts and the pay-fors, including making the tax system more fair, zero.
It's not about a dollar amount. The dollar amount, as the president said, is zero. This bill will be paid for.
Dagan, $3.5 trillion, zero, costs nothing.
Yeah, everything's free. They are bad at math. They might as well. Nancy Pelosi could get up there and say 2 + 2 is and it would be more truthful than what she was saying. And they do think the American people are stupid. The Biden administration has done that all year of the no, you just don't understand. Like your grandmother when you disagree with her. That's what Nancy Pelosi is doing. And we're not going to get any better at math based on that. I think, and this is something Dana's talked about with another subject, I think if this $3.5 trillion package, it's not that, it's $5.5 trillion, and it's not paid for based on the Joint Committee on Taxation, only $2 trillion is raised in revenue. And these are vast entitlements that transform the United States. It's the end of the American dream. There's universal basic income in here, $1 trillion in the child tax credit that would go on forever. It goes to the affluent. There are other elements in here that changes the foundation of the way we work and live. The American dream is about striving and moving up and working hard. And none of these entitlements, which go on well into the future, are tied to work. So it encourages people to essentially sit at home. That being said, a failure of this would be a great success for the Democrats next year and the Biden administration. We've already spent $6 trillion, another $1 trillion with the infrastructure. Inflation is the #1 concern for voters right now. 82% are very concerned about it. They are very concerned about inflation. That's more than coronavirus, Afghanistan, unemployment, you name it. If this dies, it helps keep inflation in check. Real wages have been falling all year. So adjusting for inflation, people are earning less money. And then I'm not going to steal your thunder, but there's one headline from today, Dana. I'm teeing you up.
I don't know which one.
The Dollar Tree headline.
Oh, that's a big one. It is.
Go there?
Did you hear about that?
I did not.
So the Dollar Tree is a very, very popular store. And I think that you could sort of see this as a barometer of what's happening. They announced today, after several months ago, saying, we're not going to increase prices, don't worry anybody. They're likely to move everything up to $1.25 to $1.50 in order to cover the cost because things are going up. And when that happens at the Dollar Tree, everybody will know about it across the
So they have to change up the name?
Right.
It's a dollar-ish.
$1.50 tree?
Dollar plus tree.
Yeah. And another thing can I go now?
Go, please.
Another thing about the bill is that several of the big 3.5 trillion, several of the several of the items expire in a few years. So, for example, free childcare. That goes away in 4 years. So what happens? Then you have to have a big fight, and you have to find out who's going to reauthorize it. So it becomes a weapon to use against any conservative who might say, I actually don't think this is a great idea, but once you start on these entitlements, that's why AOC always says, what are you talking about? Our programs are so popular. And that's because you didn't stop it in its tracks. And on this situation, heads, Biden loses, tails, the GOP wins. If they pass this monstrosity and sends the economy into a spiral, the cost of living goes up, the inflation spikes, and they get crushed in the midterms, that's what will happen because that's what people vote on. If they fail to pass it, his legislative agenda is toast.
It is. And I could see, Dan, if this guy wins a landslide in 2020 and he has 60 Senate seats, he's got a massive House majority, then you could say this is a mandate. But he didn't campaign on that, and he's got 50-50 in the Senate, razor thin in the House, yet he's going all in right now.
Yeah, and you just said something about the budget gimmicking. Remember, what you said is accurate. The spending's projected for 3 years and then the program expires, but the taxes are over the 10-year window. This is the scam they use, and the program never goes away because Republicans, you know, it's sad to say, but you know the golden rule I have about most Republicans on Capitol Hill are really Democrats, but no Democrats are really Republicans. So they'll just reauthorize the program. But here's the thing, like, this is so easy to disprove this. This is going to cost $0 insanity. We have an actual national debt counter. Like, just put it in a search engine.
Yeah.
I guarantee you it will click up every year the annualized amount of the $3.5 trillion. And yet when you show them your phone and say, look, it went up by the amount you said it wouldn't, they'll just make up a news story.
Dan, has anybody fact-checked that? All those fact-checkers that went wild?
They're busy checking, you know, like my Facebook page.
They did get 2 Pinocchios for the $0.
They only got 2?
2. They said that they could come back for more Pinocchios if they didn't.
Okay, so we're waiting on 2 other Pinocchios.
Wait, one more quick thing.
Yes.
Milton Friedman pegged it best with this. He always said, like, the myth of government spending is, you know, you think your neighbor's paying for it, but your neighbor thinks the same thing. Like, we're all just giving each other money while the government grifts and takes a cut. Government's a cesspool.
Yeah.
Every dollar it spends, it takes out of the economy and spends less efficiently than you could spend on yourself. They destroy everything they touch.
And they're saying that doesn't raise taxes on anybody making over $400K, but inflation, huge tax on the middle class.
Oh, and we're becoming Europe. We're going to become Europe, so we're going to have a value-added tax to pay for all
I
of
don't
this.
want to become Europe, Harold. I want to be America. Why can't we just be ourselves?
I resemble your
Why
statement.
are you trying to change us so
It's
much?
good to be back at the table and see some things haven't changed.
Yes.
What I would say is that there's a lot right here, and I think there's probably a little wrong. Supply chain challenges are also driving up costs as well. My family business down in Memphis, in the funeral home business, we're having problems getting caskets because of the issues in China. I don't disagree with you. Certainly, some of these pressures are driving up prices. President Biden, like a lot of presidents, President Bush, the big tax cuts, I was in Congress when those tax cuts passed. They had to be renewed also, and they were renewed under President Obama. People didn't think they would be, but they were renewed. I think it's good to let some of these things expire in Congress because you force Congress to then go back before the people and litigate it. Now, I'm not for the $3.5 trillion. I think it's too big. I don't necessarily think that spending $3.5 trillion is a totally wrong thing, but on the things they want to spend, I don't think they're serious enough. I think the universal pre-K, the investing in families, investing in child care, I think is an important thing for a lot of people who want to go to work in our country. But Democrats have gotten too much off on process in this whole thing. The more you argue process, the more you're going to lose. I think Republicans win. The party arguing against a big bill is who's arguing process is going to lose. And Democrats find themselves in a big jam. Biden, like every other president, is facing some headwinds. He's facing some consternation and some adversity. He was elected to unify the country. He was elected to help us overcome COVID and boost the economy. And the Afghan evacuation didn't go well. He's not able to unite his own party, which is creating challenges.
But he has created those headwinds, Harold. Those are all self-inflicted.
Some of them may be, but others are not. He has to unite his own party. If he can't unite his party, he's not going to. Everything you led with about this being a bad thing for Biden and for his agenda, it will come true. If they're able to get together and pass something small, grab the victory in front of you, grab the infrastructure package, try to get some momentum, then go forward. But trying to use $3.5 trillion is not going to.
I could talk about this for days on end. Number one, this universal pre-K. Okay, let's get the government involved in that area of the economy, which will surely drive up the cost. The way health insurers and college. Why do you think it costs $250,000 to get a 4-year degree? Because of government intervention in lending. So no to that. Because again, that's what the left throws at people of like, oh, well, this is about the human infrastructure, which I've actually heard Mark Zandy say. I was like, when did you start regurgitating
government spending is like, so government wants to invest in things that regular people don't want to invest in themselves.
You don't want to invest in families, Dan. You're so evil.
Oh, and it's unfair and absurd, according to Jen Psaki, when you raise a company's taxes that they're going to raise costs. She doesn't know her elbow from a hole in the ground.
Just don't change the name of the Dollar Tree store. Can we agree on that?
Yes.
We can agree on
$1 plus.
Put him in jail for a long time. They took away his life. And then you look at what Hillary Clinton did with 33,000 emails and hundreds of thousands of text messages or emails going through the Wiener server or computer, hundreds of thousands of which many were classified. And nothing happens to her, and yet they put a young sailor on for doing something innocent, showing his mother and his friend what the desk looked like. the desk in a 40-year-old submarine. I think Russia and China would have had that picture many years ago. So it's really a double standard like you've never seen. Very, very unfair. But hopefully that will change. I think that will be changing.
Mr. President, closed-door testimony recently revealed Strzok and Page that they were laughing at the idea that the Hillary investigation was a real investigation, and that it went directly into Loretta Lynch's office, which now raises a whole new set of other questions. And they were confident about that. And it was Strzok that did the interview with Hillary, uncharacteristically, frankly, unprecedented, allowed 2 other people in that interview while she was being interviewed in an investigation. Comey, of course, exonerated her, but he even acknowledged top-secret classified information on that server. I did disagree with you at the time. You, after the election, were basically saying, let bygones be bygones, let's not go down this road. Do you regret saying that? And do you think now, if we really are to get to the bottom and the truth, it has to also include Hillary Clinton, the email server, which would be an underlying crime, and obstruction, which everyone in the media seems to care about, the intent behind the 33,000 subpoenaed emails deleted, BleachBit, hammers, SIM cards?
No, I don't regret saying it. When I won, they were all saying, lock her up, lock her up. And I said, no, let's get on with life. That was different. It was like right after the election, you want to get a new page and turn over a new leaf. And I said, let's get on with it. Let's, build up the economy, which, by the way, is doing record business. I'm so proud of the economy. We're doing numbers that nobody's ever believed. Probably the best economy we've ever had, best unemployment numbers we've ever had. It's been incredible. But I said, let's get on with our life. Let's forget about the past. But now what happened is, fairly shortly after that great evening, they started coming at us with the insurance policy, and everything they did was so dishonest. And then we really started looking into a lot of things like her deleted emails and acid-washed emails, which is unheard of because of the expense of doing it, and how she got away with it, how her lawyer got away with it, how all of these things happened. Don't forget, when they interviewed her, that was on July 4th weekend. It was very, very late into the July 4th weekend. They asked her questions. They didn't have a stenographer. They didn't have anybody swear her in. They didn't have a tape recorder. They just walked in, asked her some questions, and that was fine. In the meantime, look at what she's done, how she's destroyed the lives of people that were on our campaign. She's destroyed their lives in the DNC. And frankly, when the FBI went into the DNC told them to get the hell out of here. Think of that. They told that to the FBI, and they wouldn't give them the server. I want to find out what's on that server, the DNC server, because that's the big thing. Nobody's seen that server yet. The FBI didn't see it. And these are the top people at the FBI, where you had absolute dirty cops. These were dirty cops. Now, the FBI, I know FBI guys, these are the best in the world. But the people leading it, Comey and McCabe and Strzok and Page and all of these people, the lawyer who admitted, frankly, how crooked things were. I mean, when that testimony comes out, it's already come out partially. When that testimony comes out from the attorney for the FBI, you'll see. So I really say now we have to get down, because this was a coup. This was an attempted overthrow of the United States government. We had people coming out to vote from all over this country that are in love with what we're doing. It's called Make America Great Again. That's what we've done and we're doing. And this was an overthrow, and it's a disgraceful thing. And I think it's far bigger than Watergate. I think it's possibly the biggest scandal in political history in this country, maybe beyond political. So I think that a lot of things are being learned right now, just like you just mentioned just a few moments ago, again with Strzok and Page. These are sick people. These are sick, sick people. So let's see what happens with McCabe and Comey and Brennan and Clapper. They weren't in the act. And let's see what happens, and let's see how high it goes up, because it's inconceivable when it goes to Clapper, Brennan, Comey, these people. I would imagine that some other people, maybe a little bit higher up, also knew about it, and maybe a lot higher up.
I mentioned now Strzok and Page. Independently in their conversations, Peter Strzok had said about the collusion, there's no there there. Lisa Page closed-door testimony actually said after the 9-month FBI investigation they had no evidence of anything with you and your campaign in Russia. That's before the appointment of Mueller. We also had the House Intel Committee report. That's 2, no collusion. Then the Senate bipartisan committee, and now the Mueller report. As you said, oh, any news? No obstruction, no collusion. What is your full reaction to the Mueller report?
Well, it was, as I call them, 13 angry Democrats. They were supplanted by 5 more. 5 more were added. And you got up to 18, 19, 20. They were all Democrats. Many of them made major contributions to the Hillary Clinton campaign, and they had one of them was one of the top people at the Clinton Foundation, Jeannie Ray. Then you had Weissman. You had some bad people. No friends of Trump. I had no friends. It was like a one-sided witch hunt, as I called it. And, you know, Bob Mueller, I turned him down to run the FBI. The next day he was appointed to be the head of this special counsel, as they call it. It's really a much tougher word than that, but I won't use it. And it was a terrible thing. He was conflicted for that reason. He also was conflicted because of the fact that Comey and him are best friends. So if not best, very close to best, but I would say best friends. You look at pictures of the two of them in the past. We had a nasty business transaction, the two of us. I had a nasty transaction with him, and then all of a sudden he's my prosecutor. Very, very unfair. And with all of that and $35 million spent, think of that, over 2 years, ruining lives of people, ruining their lives, people going out of business because they couldn't afford lawyers. It's just unbelievable what happened, how bad it was. I can't even tell you how bad it was. Nobody knows how people suffered. Great people that came to Washington, they came to D.C. to set the world in a very positive way on fire. They wanted to clean things up and do a great job, and all of a sudden they're testifying on nonsense. And it's really a shame. And, you know, with all of the things you've heard, nothing had to do with the campaign, nothing had to do with Russia, collusion. But the bottom line is with a group of very serious Trump haters, a group of, I call them angry Democrats, somebody who was very conflicted at the top, no collusion, and also no obstruction, because the statement was made and the Attorney General, you know, understood it very well, and he read it, and he made a decision right on the spot. No obstruction. So you had no collusion, no obstruction, $35 million spent, and unlimited manpower, woman power, and there's nothing. And it was a very bad 2 years for this country. But what has happened is we found everything going in the opposite direction. And I think now it's turning unbelievable. The tables have turned, and you're seeing things come out like you just noticed. And I think it's going to be very interesting. It's very important for the country to now find out how that whole thing started. And in all fairness to Bob Mueller, it started long before he was appointed. This was going on long before that. You understand. The First Lady and I came down on the escalator on June 16th, and this started very shortly after that. It was a disgrace.
Mr. President, we expect a lot more coming out in the days, weeks, and even months ahead. We know at least 53 more closed door, the testimony closed door of many of these players that will be released. We know that the Inspector General, he now will have his report. We expect sometime perhaps in May, likely in May, where he's been investigating the FISA abuse issue. And then, of course, we have Huber on leaking and whatever his report ultimately ends up becoming. We know that, you know, there's a lot of information. And then the issue, you have, the last time I talked to you about a month ago, you said you would declassify the FISA applications. You would declassify Gang of Eight material, 302 material. If the Grassley, Graham, Nunes memos are correct in the bulk of information in the FISA applications, or even as the New York Times suggested this week, may have been misinformation from the Russians that Hillary bought and paid for, that was disseminated to the media and the American people before that election, you know, what would that mean to you?
Well, first of all, I was very impressed that the New York Times did that, because that was the first good glimpse that maybe mainstream is going to pick up the greatest political scandal in the history of our country. Again, bigger than Watergate, because it means so much. This was a coup. This wasn't stealing information from an office in the Watergate apartments. This was an attempted coup, and it's inconceivable, like a third world country, and inconceivable. And I have to say that I think a lot of information is coming out, and it's coming out fast, much faster than anybody would have thought. And there are a lot of people very nervous about things that are going on. And I will say that IG, the Inspector General Horowitz, he, other than his conclusion where he said no bias, but he meant that in a different way than you would think, he gave a great report last time. And I really hope that he's going to give I don't know him. He was appointed by Obama. That bothers me a little bit. But I think everything I can see, he's really an honorable guy. And I think he knows how big this is. I think he knows how big this is. And if he is as honorable as he's supposed to be, the IG report coming out in 3 or 4 weeks, from what I hear, is going to be and should be and almost has to be a blockbuster, because he has access to information that most people don't. And that's what he did the last time. He was able to find things that a lot of people, great students of this whole thing, like Devin Nunes, who deserves a medal, and Meadows and Jim Jordan and all these guys, the way they, Biggs, and, you know, every one of them, they worked so hard. They worked, it's just, you know, they just couldn't stand what was happening to the country. They knew what was going on. The biggest problem with the Mueller report, he didn't mention any of this. He didn't mention Strzok and Page and McCabe and Comey and the lies and the leaks and the overthrow and the whole thing with the Hillary Clinton got to win 100 million to 1, 2 lovers, 2 sick lovers, especially the one. But I mean, these were like children, and they're FBI people. They're top people in the FBI. I'm so embarrassed for the FBI when you look at it. But he didn't mention the insurance policy. It's a very, very sad thing, and it can be cleared up incredibly well. But, you know, and so do I, that if you didn't go any further, there are tremendous problems. I'm trying to be very nice, and I want to be very tempered, but there are tremendous problems on the other side. If you had no other information other than what you have right now, tremendous problems on the other side. But why didn't they mention in the Mueller report all of the horrible things that we found out about the other side, including the fake dossier, which even the New York Times now says was fake, which, again, I respect that they came out and said it. This is too big a deal for mainstream media to give up. But the nice part is, as far as Trump is concerned and the Trump administration, there's no collusion and there's no obstruction. Now it's time to look at the other side.
Mr. President, if in fact the New York Times is right and the dossier was a disinformation campaign by Russia, that would mean, as Bruce Orr testified behind closed doors, that he even told and by the way, I agree with you about the FBI, the 99% are good people, and this is only a few at the top. But if they in fact used that dossier as the bulk of information, and it's disinformation, to use the New York Times words, from Russia, that Hillary Clinton, the opposition party candidate, paid for, that they never fully informed the FISA judges of, and the Grassley-Graham memo, Nunes memo are right, that means everybody that signed off on those 4 FISA applications, that would be the first one, Jim Comey. That would be Sally Yates, Bonte, and Rod Rosenstein. That means they never verified what they told that court. I would say that's a fraud on the FISA court. What do you say?
Well, from what I understand, they'd all be in a very big pile of trouble. That's the way I look at it, and that's the way I hear. They'd be in a very big amount of trouble. It would be a terrible thing if that's the case. And, you know, they've been denying that. And they started blaming all sorts of people, Papadopoulos, who nobody knew, and Carter Page, who I actually feel very sorry for. I never met him, but, you know, they made him. They used him to try and spy on their campaign. You know, they went in, and these two guys were put on councils having to do with, you know, various things. What difference does it make? But they were put on 2 foreign relations councils, and with a large number of other people. And as soon as people saw their name, even though I didn't meet Carter Page and Papadopoulos, I actually sat at a table with him for about 15 minutes, and that was it. I never spoke to him or anything. And they were, you know, they've suffered a lot. I don't say that they were not foolish, because, you know, the way it all happened was so crazy, but they were hit like very few people have ever been hit. And that was really to get to me. That was to get to the campaign. They started using them in order to spy on our campaign. It would look like, I mean, again, it'll come out at some point, so I don't want to be the one to say, but it seems to be, to me, it seems to be pretty obvious when you look at what happened with Carter Page. And they were spying. The Attorney General said it better than anybody the other day when he was asked. Yes, I think they were spying on the Trump campaign. You can't say it any better than that. And I think so, too.
Mr. President, I have to ask you about the new Green Deal, Biden and the media, but one last question. Will you declassify the FISA applications, Gang of 8 material, those 302s, or, you know, what we call on this program the bucket of 5?
Yes, everything is going to be declassified, and more, much more than what you just mentioned. It'll all be declassified, and I'm glad I waited, because I thought that maybe they would obstruct if I did it early, and I think I was right. So I'm glad I waited, and now the Attorney General can take a look, a very strong look at whatever it is, but it will be declassified, and more than what you just mentioned.
Mr. President, we're now in the election season, and Joe Biden made his big announcement today. I thought it was a very warm welcome you made for him on Twitter, which I read at the beginning of the show here tonight. Generally, your thoughts on him, his entry into the race. You have Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, Robert Francis O'Rourke. Your reaction to the, well, now a record number, a slate of 20 people that would like to take you on in 2020.
Well, I don't know who it's going to be. Maybe Sanders or maybe Biden. I think that, you know, when you look at Joe, I've known Joe over the years. He's not the brightest light bulb in the group, I don't think, but he has a name that they know. He's, you know, coming on with some little cute statements about me that he talked about the way the world is today. Well, I'll tell you, the way the world is today is we have a strong military. We have choice for our veterans. They have choice now instead of waiting online all day long, all week long, all month long. They have choice. They can go out to a private doctor. We pay the bill, and they don't have to die waiting online. We have the biggest tax cut in the history of our country. We have gotten rid of the individual mandate. We've had the biggest cut in regulations, which is one of the things creating all of these great jobs, because we have the best unemployment numbers that we've ever had. Today, we have the most people working, literally today, just came out. We have the most people working that we've ever had in the history of our country. Almost 160 million people are working. They have jobs. And it's incredible. So, you know, that's really where we are today. We've rebuilt the military. We've ordered jets, the likes of which no country has. We have fighter jets, the F-35, the F-18. We have jets, the likes of which no country has at all. We're ordering great ships and boats and aircraft carriers, and they're all being built in the United States. That's jobs. It's all being built right here. Best equipment in the world, best missiles in the world. We don't want to use them, but if we have to, we're set. Nobody has what we have. Nobody has our military. Nobody's even closer. When I came in, we had a depleted military. We had an economy that was going down. You remember the numbers. They were terrible, and they were going down. We were going to be in negative numbers very soon. And now we have numbers that are incredible. The economy is setting records. When foreign leaders come in to see me, Sean, they always say, thank you, and it's great to meet you, sir, and congratulations on your economy. It's the greatest economy anywhere in the world, which it is. Nobody's even close to us. And That's because of the things we've done. So when Biden makes the statement talking about the soul, I mean, the soul, take a look at the Obama. You know, I heard somebody say before that there was such dissension and division. People forget there was tremendous division during the Obama administration, tremendous division. We actually have great spirit right now. And, you know, just to finish that off, we are a country respected again. We are respected all over the world. They all respect us. Even today, I see where President Putin in Russia made the statement that it's great to be able to help us with Kim Jong-un and North Korea. We want to get rid of the nuclear weapons. We all have to get. Russia has to get rid of them, and China has to get rid of them. And by the way, China, President Xi's been a great help. We're working on a big trade deal, but he's been a great help at the border, and I'm talking about the border between North Korea and China. And, you know, a lot of good things are happening. We're respected again throughout the world, and that's a great thing.
Well, in Biden's case in particular, he's going to run on his economic record versus yours, his position on Iran and Israel and North Korea versus yours. But generally speaking, we have not just Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez, about 100 House Senate members, at least, and many of the Democratic presidential candidates for 2020 have bought into the new Green Deal. Everything's free, no oil, no gas. If Comrade de Blasio has added no steel buildings or glass buildings in New York in 5 years, but more importantly, airplanes are gone, combustion engines gone. How do you react if this is the policies that you will be running against?
Well, it's interesting because I just heard about this crazy deal in New York City where they want to build concrete buildings that little tiny windows. And, you know, I built a lot of buildings, Sean. I can tell you the bigger the window, the better I did with it. People want big windows, and now they're going to take them down to nothing. No, the whole thing is crazy. And the new Green Deal, okay, and it's got to be some kind of a joke. It's got to be, they have to be kidding. But, you know, I saw the senator from Hawaii who was so nasty to Judge Kavanaugh. And that's another thing. We'll soon have, within a period of about 2 months, 145 brand new federal judges and 2 Supreme Court judges. But she was so nasty to now Justice Kavanaugh, so horrible. And they asked her about it, the new Green Deal. They said, how about that? And she goes, well, I'm on Hawaii, and I understand they won't allow airplanes. And she said, it's hard for me, but I'll approve it anyway, even though there's no way to get. Somebody said they'll build a train to Hawaii. No, it's a crazy thing. And I can't believe they're really serious, but I hope they get a chance to run against it. I hope they don't decimate it. Sometimes I almost wish I didn't say as much as I've said to you about it, because I want that to go through, and I want to run against it. I don't think they're going to win anyway, but they're sure as hell not going to win with that legislation. Never going to happen anyway from a practical standpoint, obviously. But it is amazing to see the senators that I've known for a long time, distinguished Democrats, and they're fawning behind her. She's talking about the deal. I don't know if they're kidding. I don't know if they're desperate for votes, or I don't know if they're incompetent. But they're sitting behind her, and they're acting like they actually agree with what she's saying about fuel and cows and all of the things. I mean, it's a ridiculous situation. So I just hope it keeps going. I hope nobody criticizes it too badly. And I've already done too much tonight, because maybe I would have talked them out of it. That would have been a very bad thing.
Okay, you don't want to do that. We had an incident this week. I want to go to the issue of the borders. Obviously, a defining issue for you, and Congress was unable to override your emergency declaration. The Pentagon had identified, I believe the figure was $9 billion of unused monies, and that you were going to apply that to the wall. Then we had the incident this week where we had some people cross our border and literally, you know, took one of our guys' guns. You put out a tweet, better not happen again. What's the latest with both the wall? What's the latest on that situation? And what is I don't know if you heard about this contractor that said he can build the whole wall for a lot cheaper than anybody else and get it done by 2020. Are you aware of that?
Yes, we're dealing with him, actually. It's Fisher. Comes from North Dakota. recommended strongly by a great new senator, as you know, Kevin Cramer. And they're real, but they've been bidding, and so far they haven't been meeting the bids. I thought they would. But when we get them for a bid, we're building many sections of wall right now that's under construction right now. And I intend to have, by the end of next year, over 400 miles of wall. We've renovated a lot of wall already. A lot of the wall was, I'm good at this stuff. That's what I do. And we renovated a lot. We had wall that was falling down but structurally strong or can be strong, so we saved a lot of money. We renovated, we fixed it, and it's much quicker and frankly much less expensive. So we've renovated a lot and we built a lot. We built a lot of new wall. In some cases, we've ripped old wall down because it was in too bad a shape, and we built brand new wall. But we're building a lot of sections, and actually over the next 2-3 weeks, we're giving out a lot of different sections. They'll be building it in different areas by different contractors, a similar design and a really good design.
And you have
less
the money,
much more beautiful, and actually stronger.
The Washington Times, let me go to the issue of media. And the Washington Post, New York Times received Pulitzers for their, quote, coverage of the Russian probe. You've seen the coverage over 2+ years. Russia, 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 Trump, 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 collusion, collusion, collusion. Mueller report couldn't be any more clear on the issue specifically. Do you think the news media in this country and their coverage on this owes you an apology?
Well, they do owe me an apology, a big one. They owe you an apology, and all of the people that you mentioned previously, and many other people.
I'm not holding my breath.
We actually had a lot of support. I mean, I watch you and Tucker, and I watch Laura, and you great guys in the morning with Steve and Ainsley and Brian. Brian came a long way. I kid him, but he came a long way. And so many other people, not only on Fox, in all fairness, but you look at Jesse's been so great. And I mean, just so many people. But we had really a lot of support, including at, as you would say, the Washington Times and some others. But generally speaking, it's corrupt reporting. Generally speaking, it was fake news. And a term that, I'm very proud of. Somebody said, which is your best of the names? I don't know, maybe fake news? Who knows what it is? Now they use it. They use it to describe something. They think they get out of it by using it. They're tricky people, but they were fake. They were corrupt. And if they could change, I would be the first one to say, I respect the fact that you changed. But if they don't change, they've lost all credibility. If you read the stories that they wrote about the Russia witch hunt, and by the way, guys like Dan Bongino and Greg Jarrett and Justice Janine, how about Judge Janine, whose mother just died today,
I know.
Which is horrible.
Prayers are with her.
I just spoke to her. She's a great woman, loved her mother more than anybody other than her beautiful children. But I mean, she loved her mother. She was a great daughter, and she's going through a hard time. But how about Janine? And I mean, it's been incredible. We have far more support than people understand. If we didn't, I wouldn't even be talking to you right now. I mean, it would be a total mess. We had enough to fight the deep state. We had enough to fight corrupt media, mainstream media. I mean, NBC, I think, was worse, frankly. I think NBC is more corrupt than CNN, if that's possible. And I made them a lot of money with The Apprentice. Can you believe it? I was on that thing 12 years with The Apprentice. They wanted to sign me for 3 or 4 more years. They came up to my office. I said, I'm running for president. They tried to talk me out of it. I figured at least they would give me, for whatever reason, they would give me great, but I think they were more hostile, frankly, than CNN, which is hard to believe. But just fake, horrible stuff. Nobody can believe how dishonest they've been.
Mr. President, I've known you personally for well over 2 decades. And by the way, I don't think the fake news brand is going away, but on all the issues you ran on, conservative, originalist, constitutional justices, tax cuts, deregulation, Israel, Iran, a tougher foreign policy, the wall, We're now energy independent for the first time in, I think, 70, 75 years, and we're now a net exporter of energy. The one thing Republicans, you've gotten part of it done, and that was the individual mandate.
Right.
And you want to take on health care, Mitch McConnell said, not this year.
Well, he's going to be great. What we're going to do, Mitch is doing a very good job. We really work. He's got a passion for the courts and a passion for judges. We've worked great on that, and we'll be really good with health care. I mean, we want to have, we're going to do things that nobody's ever seen in health care, but we have to get back the House. In order to do, we have to take back the House. If we don't take back the House, we have a problem. You're never going to have good health care because Obamacare is a disaster. It's too expensive, not working. And we had it done. It was done. And then John McCain, at the very last moment, late in the evening, went thumbs down, and everybody said, what was that? John McCain went thumbs down. He did a Republican Party a tremendous disservice, and he did the nation a tremendous disservice. Tremendous. And it's unfortunate, but we had it done. And had we known he was going to, because he said he was voting for it all day long, had we known that he was going to vote against it, I think we could have convinced one of the other two people that voted against it. We could have convinced them. I feel confident to go for it. But we didn't even try because we knew we had John McCain. We had everybody. We were all set. And he went thumbs down at the very last moment. And I thought it was a disgraceful thing to do and very, very bad for our country and bad for health care. But we're going to do something that will be great. We have to get the House back. It'll be much better than Obamacare. And don't forget, they want to take 180 million private insurance plans away. People. 180 million people are going to be stripped of their great insurance that they have right now because we've made great insurance available to people. Obamacare is actually, it's very important, but it's actually a small part. We have a very big case in court, and I think eventually the Democrats and Republicans would come together. But we have a fantastic plan that we'll be rolling out, and it's subject to us winning back the House, keeping the presidency, which I think we're going to do, and also obviously winning the Senate. And as you know, in 2018, we picked up seats in the Senate, but nobody ever gives us credit for that. We won the governorships of many states, including Ohio and Georgia and Florida. And we had, just great. We were at 53 to 47. Nobody talks about that. We had actually a very successful, we really did. We really had a very successful 2018 election. And don't forget, it's the Senate that approves the judges, that approves nominees, but it approves, most importantly, perhaps, the judges.
Mr. President, in this whole investigative process, you never invoked executive privilege. You handed over every document. You told your staff to cooperate. That's fairly unprecedented. And, yeah, everybody knows that you said it was a witch hunt. Pretty often, you said you were innocent, no collusion the whole time. And you talked about, why don't we fire Mueller or Rosenstein or whoever it happened to be, but you had the authority under Article 2, according to Alan Dershowitz and other lawyers, but that's a separate issue. You never did those things. And I guess my question is, when you said this week you will now fight all subpoenas and enough cooperating, can you expand on what you meant and what that means?
Well, very simply, because enough is enough. I could have fired everybody, but
under Article 2.
I wanted to have transparency. Article 2. I could have fired everybody. I could have fired Mueller. I could have fired anybody that I wanted to fire. Article 2. I fired nobody other than Comey. And the very interesting, and that was early, and people don't talk about that, but the very interesting thing about firing Comey is that everybody wanted him fired. All the Democrats, virtually everybody. The Democrats thought he was horrible. The Republicans thought he was horrible. And I said, this is going to be wonderful. I'm going to fire this guy. When he gets fired, I figured it would be popular. I thought it was going to be a bipartisan firing, right? And he got fired, and the Democrats sat back and they thought, and the same people that 2 days earlier were saying how horrible he was were saying, this is a terrible thing. It's what's a terrible thing is they're not putting our country first. And I have been the most transparent president in history. I said, let anybody speak. The White House counsel can go speak. Everybody. I heard, this is incredible, but I heard they interviewed 500 people. I didn't know we had that many people between the White House and other branches. I mean, who would think? They interviewed 500 people, if that is possible to be correct. They spent, as I told you, $35 million. They had unlimited human resources. They had the FBI working for them. They had U.S. attorneys. They had the Justice Department working for them, and they found no collusion. But I was totally transparent. I didn't tell anybody you can't go in, and I could have. I could have said you're not going to testify. Nobody is going to testify. When I say it, they do what I say. I could have said that, but what happened, Sean, is I wanted to be totally transparent. So then we get no collusion, no obstruction, and then the House starts. Now we're going to go, and we're going to go further. And I said, we've had it. That's enough.
Mr. President, only for the constraints of time, I'd love to ask you in detail about all these candidates. How about one-word description on some of the top candidates for 2020? Like, for example, if I say the word Joe Biden, 1 or 2 words.
Well, I think we're calling him Sleepy Joe because I've known him for a while, and he's a pretty sleepy guy. He's not going to be able to deal with President Xi, I will tell you. That's a different level of energy and, frankly, intelligence. So I sort of refer to him as Sleepy Joe because a lot of people wanted me to change the word sleepy to something else that rhymes with it. Does that make sense to you? And I thought it was too nasty.
Yeah, I guess.
I thought it was too nasty.
Well,
but
welcome to the race. I'll see you at the starting gate.
He's not going to be able to do the job.
What about Bernie Sanders?
Well, he's got a lot of energy, but he's got misguided energy, and he's done very poorly in terms of the Senate. He's done very little legislation. I think he talks a lot and doesn't get it done.
Robert Francis O'Rourke.
Well, it's a fluke. Ted Cruz did a good job. I helped them a lot in Texas. We went down, had a couple of massive rallies, and the people of Texas are incredible. They figured it all out. He's fading very fast. I think he is fading very, very fast. It looks like he's going to be a thing of the past pretty soon. But he was a hot item for a little while. Show you how dishonest the press was. I went down to El Paso. We did a tremendous rally. I guess we had 35,000 people between inside and out, at least. And he had 502 people. And the press said they both had big rallies. They both had big rallies. I said, wait a minute, one has close to 40,000 people, one has 500 people. And they were very much comparing them. But that's the way the media is. And that's why people don't like the media. They've got to straighten it out, because otherwise it's not free press. But he is fading fast. There's no question about it.
All right, we have about a minute left, less than a minute. Mayor Pete, Kamala Harris.
Well, I don't see either of them. I think she's got a little bit of a nasty wit, but that might be it. And Mayor Pete is not going to make it. I would hope he would. I'm rooting for him, but he's not going to make it.
All right, Mr. President, you've been very generous once again with your time. I think it's important sometimes. I know when you do other interviews that people want to play gotcha fight and they have their own agenda, but every once in a while I think it's important for the American people to hear you in answer in your own words at length on some important issues. We do appreciate you coming on and giving so much time to this audience in particular. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Sean.
Order. Without objection, the chair is permitted to declare recess at any time. In April of 2016, as the U.S. presidential race was getting underway, an individual with links to the Russian government reached out to the Trump campaign to telegraph the Kremlin's preference for Mr. Trump. Joseph Massoud, a London-based Maltese professor, told George Papadopoulos, a member of Trump's foreign policy team, that he recently met with high-level Russian officials who told him that the Russians had dirt on Hillary Clinton, including thousands of emails. Papadopoulos was also informed that the Russian government could assist the Trump campaign through the anonymous release of stolen material. At the time Mr. Papadopoulos was given this extraordinary information, the American public was unaware that the DNC and Clinton campaign had even been hacked, let alone that Russia was behind the attack and planned to weaponize the data that it stole. In July of 2016, the Russian government began dumping the stolen emails in precisely the same fashion it had previewed for Mr. Papadopoulos. It was at this point, informed of the Russian outreach to Papadopoulos, and aware that the Russians were actively meddling in our election through the anonymous release of the information, that the FBI opened up its investigation. But as James Comey would explain in his first public testimony on the matter in March 2017, and before this committee, the investigation began not as a criminal probe, but as a counterintelligence investigation. What does that mean? How does a counterintelligence investigation differ from a criminal investigation? What does it mean that a U.S. person may be acting as a witting or unwitting agent of a foreign power? And how could the Russians use the compromise of U.S. persons to influence U.S. policy in a manner that jeopardizes our national security? These are the questions that we hope to answer today. During the second of a series of hearings the committee will be conducting to explore the special counsel's disturbing findings in Volume 1 of the report, and to examine what steps are necessary to protect the public, our democracy, and our national security. We will hear from two former senior FBI executives who oversaw the counterintelligence division of the Bureau, who will help us better understand the counterintelligence implications of the range of contacts between the Trump campaign and Russians directly or indirectly tied to Kremlin intelligence services. Volume 1 of the report outlines a sweeping and systemic effort by Russia to interfere in the 2016 election for the benefit of Donald Trump. It establishes that the Trump campaign welcomed the Russian interference because it expected to benefit electorally from information stolen and released through the Russian effort. It shows how the Trump campaign built the theft and dumping of Russian stolen documents into its campaign messaging and strategy. And as special counsel made clear, it sets out in great detail why the conduct in his report should concern every American. The report details well over 100 contacts between the Trump campaign and agents and officials of Russia. Some of this outreach was conducted in public, as when the president called on Russia to hack his opponent's emails, and only hours later, a unit of the Russian military intelligence, the GRU, attempted to do exactly that. Other contacts took place outside of the public view, as in the case of the June 9, 2016 meeting at Trump Tower in New York between a Russian delegation and the president's eldest son, Donald Trump Jr., his son-in-law Jared Kushner, and Paul Manafort, Trump's campaign chairman. That meeting was part of a plan to secretly receive help in the form of dirt on Hillary Clinton from the Russian government. Still, other contacts, because of encrypted apps, destroyed communications, and deception, remain shrouded in secrecy, such as Manafort's meetings with Konstantin Kilimnik, someone the FBI assesses to have ties to Russian intelligence, Manafort's provision of internal polling data to Kilimnik, and their discussion of the campaign strategy for winning Democratic votes in Midwestern states. Most Americans consider the solicitation of foreign help during a presidential campaign, the offer of foreign assistance, and the campaign's eagerness to accept that offer, quote, "If it is what you say it is, I love it," to constitute plain evidence of collusion. Not to mention the sharing of polling data and campaign strategy by the chairman of a campaign with a foreign nation, which at that very same time is intervening to help their campaign win. Nevertheless, and contrary to the president's oft-repeated mantra and the many misrepresentations of the Attorney General, the special counsel reached no conclusion as to whether the Trump campaign's many Russian contacts constituted collusion, since that term is not defined in criminal law. For those who have not yet read the Mueller report, and most have not, they might be astonished to learn that a finding of no collusion, much less a finding of no obstruction, is nowhere to be seen on any page or in any passage of the Mueller report. Instead, in making its charging decisions, the special counsel examined only whether it could meet the Justice Department's high bar of being able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt at trial each element of the crime of conspiracy, and found that it could not, even as it emphasized that the failure to establish conspiracy did not mean the absence of evidence of conspiracy. Volume 1 of the Mueller report is therefore, by its very nature and the special counsel's mandate, a report about the exercise of prosecutorial judgment, who should be charged and who should not. It does not contain the FBI's counterintelligence findings, that is, were Trump campaign, transition, or administration figures, including the president, acting as agents of a foreign power wittingly or unwittingly? Were they advancing Russian or other foreign interests by virtue of financial incentives or compromise whether or not such actions were a crime. These are the types of concerns that the FBI's Counterintelligence Division works to expose, prevent, and investigate using an array of investigative and intelligence capabilities. As we will hear from our witnesses today, the primary objective of a counterintelligence investigation is not to target an individual for prosecution, but to protect the nation by developing information about the actions and intentions of foreign powers and to thwart them before they can act against us. The President's efforts to make money from a real estate project in Moscow and to conceal the transaction from the public are a quintessential example of a counterintelligence nightmare that may or may not include criminal activity. It may not be a crime to build a Trump Tower in Moscow, or for Michael Cohen to seek the Kremlin's help to do so. It may not be a crime to try to enrich yourself with a foreign business deal even while running for president, or to lie about it to the American people. But it is deeply compromising. And not only because of the inducement of hundreds of millions of dollars, no, that is only part of it. It is also deeply compromising because the Russians were on the other end of the transaction and could expose the president's duplicity at any time. In fact, when the Trump Organization's efforts to enlist the Kremlin's help in the deal were finally exposed, Dmitry Peskov, Putin's spokesman, told the international media that the Kremlin never responded to Michael Cohen's outreach. Thanks to the Mueller report and our own committee's investigation, we now know that Mr. Peskov's statement was a lie. The Kremlin did follow up. So here we have the prospect of the Kremlin participating in a cover-up by the President of the United States. Here is what we know. The President sought to make money from a foreign power during the campaign. So did some of his children. So did his campaign manager and deputy campaign manager. So did his personal lawyer and his national security advisor. Some of these actors have been prosecuted, but all of their actions are deeply compromising of our national security. And yet, Mueller's report provides no evaluation of the counterintelligence concerns raised by these facts and others. Of all the questions that Mueller helped resolve, he left many critical questions unanswered. What happened to the counterintelligence investigation? Were there other forms of compromise like money laundering left out, uninvestigated, or referred to other offices? Were individuals granted security clearances that shouldn't have? And are there individuals still operating in the administration that leave America vulnerable? We are determined to find out. And now yield to the ranking member for any opening remarks that he would like to make.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Here we are more than 2 years since Democrats from this committee publicly claimed to have more than circumstantial evidence that the Trump campaign colluded with Russians to hack the 2016 election. And more than 2 years since they read false allegations from the Steele dossier into the congressional record at an open hearing of this committee. After that, the American people were subjected to endless hysteria by the media, Democrats, and anonymous intelligence leakers. Seemingly every day, the media triumphantly published a supposed bombshell story, often based on classified documents the reporters had not actually seen, which purportedly proved that President Trump or some Trump associate was a treacherous Russian agent. Democrats on this committee regularly joined the news pundits in denouncing the traitors. Eventually, the Democrats became convinced that the Mueller report would finally rid them of their sinister president who had the audacity to defeat Hillary Clinton. The entire scheme has now imploded, and the collusion accusation has become exposed as a hoax. One would think the Democrats would simply apologize and get back to lawmaking and oversight, but it's clear they couldn't stop this grotesque spectacle even if they wanted to. After years of false accusations and McCarthyite smears, the collusion hoax now defines the Democratic Party. The hoax is what they have in place of a governing philosophy or a constructive vision for our country. The Democrats assembled us today to analyze the shoddy political hit piece known as the Mueller report. It's written in the same spirit and with the same purpose as the Steele dossier, which was once championed by Democrats on this committee, but which they rarely mentioned after it was exposed as yet another Democrat-created hoax. Unfortunately for the Democrats, the Mueller dossier, as I call it, either debunked many of their favorite conspiracy theories or did not even find them worth discussing. These include Mueller's finding that Michael Cohen did not travel to Prague to conspire with the Russians, no evidence that Carter Page conspired with the Russians, no mention of Paul Manafort visiting Julian Assange in London, no mention of secret communications between a Trump Tower computer server and Russia's Alpha Bank, and no mention of former NRA lawyer Cleta Mitchell or her supposed knowledge of a scheme to launder Russian money through the NRA for the Trump campaign. Insinuations against Mitchell originated with Fusion GPS chief Glenn Simpson and were first made public in a document published by Democrats on this committee. The real purpose of the Mueller dossier, however, was to help Democrats impeach the president in absence of any evidence of collusion. Thus, the report includes a long litany of ordinary contacts between Trump associates and Russians, as if a certain number of contacts indicate a conspiracy, even if no conversations actually created or even discussed a conspiracy. Excerpts from a voicemail from Trump attorney John Dowd that the Mueller team selectively edited to make it seem threatening and nefarious. No comment on the close relationship between Democrat operatives at Fusion GPS and multiple Russians who participated in the June 9th, 2016 meeting at Trump Tower. In fact, no mention or comment on Fusion GPS at all. No useful information on figures who played key roles in the investigation, such as Joseph Mifsud, a Malta diplomat, or the Australian diplomat Alexander Downer, or the Democrat paid operative, former spy Christopher Steele. No useful information about the many irregularities that marred the FBI's Russia investigation. Furthermore, the Mueller dossier cites dozens of articles from the reporters and publications that were most responsible for perpetuating the Russian hoax. Thus, Mueller produced a perfect feedback loop. Intelligence leakers spin a false story to the media. The media publishes the story. Mueller cites the story. And the media and the Democrats then fake outrage at Mueller's findings. In sum, Mueller relied on a mass of reporting whose central narrative that the Trump campaign colluded with the Russians to hack the elections is false. And the Democrats spread a hoax claiming Trump is a Russian agent, but it was later discovered the only people who colluded with Russians were the Democrats, who paid for the Steele dossier, which relied on Russian sources. I'd like to remind the Democrats on this committee that this was created to do important oversight work of our intelligence agencies. This work is even more crucial now that the media have abandoned their traditional watchdog role and instead have become a mouthpiece of a cabal of intelligence leakers. I understand the Democrats' inability to move past their failed hoax and get back to normal business. Nevertheless, I suggest they give it a try. Welcome the speakers today and look forward to your testimony. Bill Beck.
Thank you to our witnesses for coming before the committee today to ensure that all members are able to ask questions due to competing business of other committees this morning. Today's witnesses will be afforded 5 minutes each for their opening statements, which will be strictly enforced. We will then proceed immediately to member questions. I want to thank our witnesses for joining us for this important open hearing. Stephanie Douglas currently serves as Senior Managing Director of Guidepost Solutions, addressing high-risk investigations and compliance matters. Prior to this position, Ms. Douglas served for over 23 years at the FBI in a variety of roles, including as Executive Assistant Director of the National Security Branch. Robert Anderson is currently the Chief Executive Officer of Cyber Defense Labs and previously was a principal at the Chertoff Group and Managing Director at Navigant Consulting. Mr. Anderson served for many years in the FBI, rising to be the Executive Assistant Director of the Criminal Cyber Response and Services Branch. I'd also like to welcome the minorities witness, Andrew McCarthy, a former Assistant United States Attorney, like many of our staff from the Southern District of New York, and currently a Senior Fellow at the National Review Institute and a contributing editor of the National Review. Ms. Douglas, we'll start with you.
Good morning, Chairman Schiff, Ranking Member Nunes, and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to answer questions relative to Volume 1 of the Special Counsel's report regarding Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election. As was established and communicated by the U.S. intelligence community in early 2017, the Russian government systematically and effectively used a number of intelligence tools to impact the 2016 election. The special counsel's report supports these conclusions and provides specific and detailed examples which illustrate the methods of Russian influence. I'm happy to answer questions regarding this report, but understand that I have no access to any supporting information or investigative detail other than that is provided in the special counsel's report. I am proud to have been a special agent in the FBI for almost 24 years, most of it focused on counterintelligence and national security matters. While the FBI has been the subject of much discussion in the press and elsewhere, I support the work of the counterintelligence professionals who worked with the special counsels to conduct this exhaustive investigation. I hope that my presence here in our discussion today will lead to further awareness and preparation for what is certain to be another high-threat election in 2020. So with that, I'm happy to answer your questions.
Thank you. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Ranking Member Nunes and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today to talk to you about counterintelligence and cyber threats to our great nation. I hope that my background and experience as the former Assistant Director of Counterintelligence for the FBI, where I was responsible for all counterintelligence, espionage, and economic espionage matters, can assist in shedding some light on the daily threat our country faces from foreign intelligence services. These threats were highlighted several times by the heads of the United States intelligence community and also in the report on the investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election, which is commonly known now as the Mueller report. In my current role as the CEO of a cybersecurity company, I see hundreds and hundreds of cyber breaches every year. And in my opinion, these attacks originate from a variety of criminal organizations, nation states, and hacktivists. In my opinion, in the last 3 years, these attacks have become more sophisticated, prevalent, and have occurred on a much larger scale than before. I think this is extremely important when we talk about hostile intelligence services and their activities in the 21st century. During my career, I had the privilege to work for 3 directors, Louis Freeh, Robert Mueller, James Comey. The last position I held, as the chair had said, was the Executive Assistant Director of the Criminal Cyber Response and Services Branch, where I managed a number of divisions, but I was mainly in charge of high-profile criminal and cyber investigations. The threats to our country have changed remarkably since when I first entered into law enforcement in 1987 as a young Delaware State Trooper. During my career, I had the privilege to work alongside the men and women of the FBI and the United States intelligence community, who I can tell you have worked tirelessly to combat these hostile intelligence services activities to our great country. As the committee knows, the number of sophisticated counterintelligence cyber attacks against this nation's networks and private sector companies and government has increased dramatically. I look forward to discussing these issues with you today and the committee, and I stand ready for your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Mr. McCarthy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ranking Member Nunes, members of the committee, thank you for inviting me here this morning. I served as a federal prosecutor for nearly 20 years, almost all of it at the United States Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York, where I retired in 2003 as the Chief Assistant U.S. Attorney of the Southern District's Satellite Office in White Plains. Since leaving government service, I've been a writer and a commentator. I'm appearing this morning in my personal capacity as a former government official who cares deeply about our national security and the rule of law. For most of my first several years as a prosecutor, my work focused on international organized crime. After the World Trade Center was bombed on February 26, 1993, I spent much of the last decade of my tenure working on national security investigations. I'm proud to have led the successful prosecution of Sheikh Omar Abdul Rahman and 11 other jihadists for conspiring to wage a war of urban terrorism against the United States. I was privileged in that effort to work alongside a superb team of federal prosecutors, support staff, and investigators assigned to the FBI's Joint Counterterrorism Task Force. It was in connection with that investigation that I became intimately familiar with the FBI's counterintelligence mission and the powerful tools that the Constitution and federal law make available for the execution of that mission. While it escapes the attention of many Americans who know the Bureau as the nation's premier law enforcement agency, the FBI is also, as my colleagues at the table have noted, our domestic security service. This is a purposeful arrangement on our government's part to have both the national security and the law enforcement mission housed in the same, under the same bureaucratic roof. And I believe it's a prudent one, and that the FBI does it, generally speaking, in an exceptional fashion. I look forward to engaging with the committee. I'd make a few general points to start about Volume 1 of the report. It draws three principal conclusions. First, the Putin regime perceived advantage in a Trump victory and conducted its operations accordingly. Second, there is evidence that the Trump campaign hoped to benefit from the publication of negative information about the opponent. And third, there is no evidence of a conspiracy between the Trump campaign and the Russian regime. The first of these two findings are more in the nature of political assertions than prosecutorial findings. If there is insufficient evidence that a conspiratorial enterprise existed, a prosecutor has no business speculating on the motives in a politically provocative manner. Moreover, I do not believe the assertion is borne out by the evidence. The report shows that agents of Putin's regime expressed support for Trump's candidacy. That is entirely consistent with a motivation to incite divisions and dissent in the body politic of free Western nations, which is Russia's MO throughout the world. Russia's goal is to destabilize Western governments, which advantages the Kremlin by making it more difficult for those governments to pursue their interests in the world. Putin tends to back the candidates he believes will lose, on the theory that an alienated losing faction will make it harder for the winning faction to govern. Putin is all about Russia's interests, which is destabilization. It is a mistake, I respectfully submit to the committee, to allow him to divide us by portraying him as on one side or the other side. He's against all of us. There's no reason to doubt that the Trump campaign hoped to benefit from the publication of negative information about Secretary Clinton. That is what campaigns do. It is not an admirable aspect of our electoral politics that campaigns seek negative information, euphemistically known as opposition research, wherever they can find it. Candidate Trump's opposition hoped to benefit from the theft of tax information. The Clinton campaign took help from elements of the Ukrainian government, and through its agents, it hired a British former spy to tap Kremlin-connected operatives for damaging information about Trump. The First Amendment makes it difficult to regulate this sort of thing. Our guiding principle is that good information will always win out against bogus information. We can debate how well that works, but we shouldn't pretend that the Trump campaign is the first or the only one ever to play this game. Finally, as for the conclusion that there was no Trump-Russia conspiracy to commit espionage or violate other federal criminal law, I believe this had to have been obvious no later than the end of 2017. In September of 2017, the Carter Page FISA warrant lapsed. I'm sorry, sir?
Mr. McCarthy, your time has expired, but we'll be happy to receive
Thank you, sir.
The complete written testimony. Thank you. I'll recognize myself for 5 minutes. Ms. Douglas, the investigation, as James Comey revealed when he testified before our committee the first time in open session about the Trump investigation, began as a counterintelligence probe. The Mueller report devotes only one paragraph to that counterintelligence investigation. In it, Mr. Mueller says, from its inception, the office recognized that its investigation could identify foreign intelligence and counterintelligence information relevant to the FBI's broader national security mission. FBI personnel who assisted the office established procedures to identify and convey such information to the FBI. It then talks about counterintelligence FBI agents embedded within Mueller's team sending findings back to headquarters. We have yet to see those findings. Can you tell us the nature of that counterintelligence investigation or a counterintelligence investigation, where those findings would go within the FBI, whether counterintelligence investigations like criminal probes have a formal opening and a formal closing. Since a counterintelligence investigation doesn't result necessarily in criminal charges, when does a counterintelligence probe come to an end, and where do we need to go to find out answers?
Thank you. So I do recall reading that paragraph in the report, and based on the paragraph, it sounds like there are intelligence components sitting within the Mueller investigative team that is reporting other information that may fall outside the purview of the scope of the Mueller investigation. So it could be additional information that they're developing in the course of their investigation that has foreign counterintelligence aspects to it that needs to be looked at independent of the Mueller investigation. So it could be another contact with the Russian that they don't think really falls within the scope of the Mueller investigation, that they then will task out through an intelligence apparatus to an appropriate place, either in a field office or to headquarters, to run down possibly a separate investigation would be spun up on something like that. Counterintelligence investigations do have an opening and a closing, and they're not unlike criminal investigations in a lot of different ways. You have to be able to articulate a predication for an investigation. You have to initially kind of take it through a number of different steps to really affirm the allegation in the first place. And then as you gather information relative to that allegation, you may have an ability to increase the different tools that you use against it based on the amount of evidence and information and intelligence that you're gathering under that case authority. It could be a preliminary investigation, and I know that you're familiar with some of that there are limited tools that you can deploy against that, or it could be a full investigation, which allows you a much broader set of investigative tools. But there can be beginnings, there are beginnings and ends of these investigations. I hope I explained the intelligence aspect, pushing it back to other components that would actually take the lead and do further work on it outside the scope of the Mueller investigation.
Thank you. Mr. Anderson, the Mueller report focuses really on two things. It focuses on the Russian hacking dumping operation, and it focuses on the Russian social media operation and the question of whether U.S. persons conspired with either. It does not analyze whether, for example, financial motivations, the president's desire to build a Trump Tower in Moscow, or the campaign chairman Paul Manafort's desire to make money from Russian oligarch Oleg Deripaska, or the National Security Advisor's effort to make money from Turkey, or other motivations to secure financing for Trump properties, motivated policies towards Russia either during the campaign or thereafter. Would those be in the nature of counterintelligence concerns, and what might concern the FBI about U.S. persons of influence in administration seeking to make money from foreign powers even as they guide U.S. policy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, when it comes to Russia and the SVR, GRU, or FSB, their number one, number two, and number three priority is this country. They will absolutely exploit any avenue that they can when it comes to trying to get to the ends to whatever they're trying to do, whether it's intelligence or it's looking to potentially extort somebody into action. It doesn't surprise me at all that the Russian government launched sophisticated cyber operations against our country during the times when we look at it in the report. They're some of the best in the world at this, quite frankly. They will take that information and exploit it in any way they can. When it comes to the actual individuals that have been approached or talked to in and around the Trump campaign before he became president and even afterwards, it also doesn't surprise me from what I've read in the Mueller report that they are going after, or at least looking to appear to meet with, numerous individuals around and inside the campaign. That is an absolute classic tradecraft of Russia and the Russian intelligence services. They'll never have one point of failure. If they're looking to try to obtain or pass information or potentially even influence information, they'll make sure that they have numerous aspects or points to where they can try to get that done. So to answer your question specifically about that, there are definitely situations where, in some instances, as Stephanie said, you would have concerns about that, and then you would either go out potentially, depending what they saw, and talk to the individuals that were being approached, or potentially what other information you have, you may then open up either assessments or some type of investigation to look at that. It would definitely be a counterintelligence concern.
And what's the concern when you have policymakers seeking to make money from an adversary at the same time they're making policy?
Well, there's that I think is pretty clear. I mean, you know, in the business world, it's a global business and market. I understand that, but when it comes to national security of the country, there's specific rules regarding all this with our clearances and also what we can and cannot do while we're a government employee. Those rules, as the committee knows, become more intense the higher you go within government. And I think you always have to look at, when you're looking at Russia, there's a so-called president sitting over there that was a former lieutenant colonel in the KGB, one of the most vicious intelligence services in history of this world, which was disbanded right before he went into politics. He absolutely understands how to run proactive intelligence and counterintelligence operations against our country. So I think that's a high area of threat where people should be very concerned about that.
Mr. Nunes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm concerned about anybody in the Department of Justice or the FBI, current or former officials, that would think it's okay to open up a counterintelligence investigation into political campaigns. I think that's really at the forefront of what we've been facing here. Mr. McCarthy, are you aware of all your 20-plus years at the Justice Department that there was ever a time a counterintelligence investigation opened up on any presidential campaign that you're aware of?
I'm not aware of a specific situation like that. We do have a history in this country of government interference in political campaigns. In fact, the FISA law is a vestige of exactly the sort of thing that we're talking about in the 1960s and 70s. You know, political spying and the notion that we needed to give Americans a modicum of
Well, some degree it was the reason for not only the creation of the FISA laws, but the creation of this committee, was to ensure that the intelligence agencies stayed out of politics. And that was why we provided oversight. And we don't have to get into this too much, but as you know, the Trump team never received a briefing. It seems like at some point they would have went to, if they had concerns about individuals, they would have went to the Trump campaign and explained it to them, especially since they had two former U.S. attorneys on the staff or on the team, and both Governor Christie and former Mayor Rudy Giuliani. I want to get to Joseph Mifsud, because he seems to be the character at the beginning of this saga. He's supposedly the one who was able to see or knew about emails and had talked to Papadopoulos about emails. Now, only go to what Mueller says in his report. He portrays him as having deep ties to Russia, detailing trips to Moscow and extensive contacts with Russian officials. Now, Mueller stopped short of calling Mifsud a Russian agent. Now, James Comey, the former FBI director in the Washington Post a few weeks ago, in fact, does call Mifsud a Russian agent. I'm not sure what he knows that Mueller does not know. However, my big concern about Mifsud is that he was a Malta diplomat. He worked closely with the Italian government. He's described in the press as a Western intelligence asset by some in the press. He worked at the London Center that's affiliated with many operations in the UK. Has been a guest speaker at numerous foreign policy forums all over the globe. I think most concerning to me, two things are most concerning. One is he was known to train or train with FBI officials in Italy. And also that he actually spoke here in the United States Congress, just steps from not this committee, this is the budget committee that we're in, but just a few hundred feet away from the House Intelligence Committee. In 2017, this was after, he knew all of this, supposedly. And yet, that he was invited by our own State Department. So, Mr. McCarthy, my question to you is, if Mifsud truly is what James Comey says, a Russian agent, We have compromises in the U.S. State Department. We have compromises within the FBI, possibly even the Department of Justice.
Well, you know, Jim Comey has a lot more information about MIFSUD than I do. I've been out of government for a very long time. I do note that the Mueller report is very careful, I thought, about the way that MIFSUD is described. They do not, they say that he's got deep connections to Russia. They don't say that he's got deep connections to the Russian regime necessarily, or certainly to Russian intelligence services. I thought it was interesting that we learned in the Mueller report that MIFSUD was actually interviewed by the FBI and denied having told Papadopoulos that they discussed emails. The reason I found that interesting is if there's anything we learned from the Mueller investigation, it's that Mr. Mueller was quite good at bringing false statements prosecutions if he thought that he could prove the witnesses who they were interviewing had given false information to the FBI. No such prosecution was ever brought against MIFSUD, so I just thought that was an interesting fact as well.
And also in the Mueller report, in one of the footnotes, they referred to a media story, which I outlined in my opening statement. In that same media report that they used to justify where MIFSUD worked, they left out the fact that in that same media story, he was described as a Western intelligence asset. Why didn't that make it into the Mueller report?
You're asking the wrong guy.
It's a little peculiar, I would think. My time is up, Mr. Chairman. I'll yield back.
Mr. Himes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to the panel. The Mueller report highlights the counterintelligence risk posed by financial leverage that the Russians may have had over individuals, a variety of individuals close to President Trump, especially Paul Manafort. The report explains that, quote, Manafort had connections to Russia through his prior work for Russian oligarch Oleg Deripaska and later through his work for a pro-Russian regime in Ukraine. Manafort stayed in touch with these contacts during the campaign period through Konstantin Kilimnik, a longtime Manafort employee who previously ran Manafort's office in Kiev and who the FBI assesses to have ties to Russian intelligence. We also know from reporting that Manafort owed Deripaska substantial sums of money. Many of Manafort's contacts with Kremlin-aligned actors took place while he was chairman of Donald Trump's campaign. Among other things, Manafort, quote, instructed Rick Gates, his deputy on the campaign and a longtime employee, to provide Kilimnik with updates on the Trump campaign, including internal polling data. It appears that Manafort believed that by sharing confidential campaign information with Deripaska, one of Putin's most loyal oligarchs, he could resolve their, quote, disagreement originating from several lawsuits filed by Deripaska against Manafort. The ranking member's opening comments that the contacts with Russia were ordinary, notwithstanding, and Mr. McCarthy, with due respect to your many decades of service to this country, that is not what campaigns do. Sharing internal polling data with a hostile foreign power is not what campaigns do. I'm willing to bet you or anybody else my next paycheck that not a single member of the United States Congress, the 535 of us, ever asked our campaign managers to share our internal polling data with a hostile foreign power. So, Mr. Anderson, let me start with you. How could the Kremlin or its intelligence services try to exploit Manafort's longstanding business and personal relationship with Konstantin Kilimnik, who the FBI assesses to have ties to Russian intelligence, and to Deripaska? How could they use that relationship? What counterintelligence risks are posed by such a relationship with a presidential campaign?
Well, there's a lot, sir. One, obviously, they would exploit, if they did have financial leverage on that individual, they would exploit every aspect of that. The one thing I will tell you about Russian intelligence services is if you read a book from 1940, they're the same. They are a in-your-face, not a very polite bunch of people that will use any means possible once they've locked on into an individual that they deem necessary to get to whatever end they're going after. So not only would they exploit financial information from Mr. Manafort or anybody else that they could, but they would also use that then to look at individuals around those financial transactions. So in other words, not only going directly at Mr. Manafort, but potentially going at individuals around those financial transactions, that if for some reason that did not work against him, they would look at other avenues to get towards that.
Thank you. Ms. Douglas, let me ask you a variant of that question. How could Russia's knowledge of Manafort's illicit dealings, for which he is now a tenant of the United States government, which stem from his work with pro-Kremlin parties in Ukraine, be useful as compromat or compromising material as the Russian government undertook a covert influence effort directed at the U.S. public? How could the Russians use what they knew about Paul Manafort to their advantage?
Well, I think they did it very effectively. And one of the ways they did it that it's immediately apparent is they actually tasked him. And that's one of the initial tests when you are developing an asset for intelligence collection.
Can you elaborate on that? You just said that the Russians tasked the campaign chairman of Donald Trump's campaign. Can you just elaborate on how the Russians tasked him?
They asked him to provide polling data. And like you said, I mean, polling data isn't the keys to the kingdom, right? But it is a small step that illustrates his willingness to provide information to someone he knows he's beholden to financially, right? An ongoing lawsuit, fees that are owed, and he is willing to provide internal campaign information to a foreign government and to a person who was closely tied to the Kremlin. And I think that is a great illustration of how the Russians work. And Paul Manafort was very, very forward-leaning on volunteering all of his abilities, his experience, his connections. He made all that available in addition. But I thought that that was very interesting, that they are tasking him and building upon that. And if he would have stayed with the campaign, I am sure they would have continued to task him.
Thank you. I'm out of time, so I'll yield back the balance of my time. Thank you.
Mr. Conaway.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank our witnesses. Former FBI Director Comey testified before this committee in open session that the FBI coordinates with the intelligence community as an investigative technique in its investigations. It's since become clear that the U.S. intelligence community expended much time and resources in supporting the FBI's investigation into the Trump campaign for alleged but unfounded collusion with Russia regarding the 2016 election. In December of 2016, nearly a month after the election, President Obama finally ordered a review of Russian activities targeting the election. Why would the administration not conduct this type of comprehensive review earlier, especially given the October 2016 public statement by DHS, ODNI, and the FBI regarding Russian cyber activity? Why the timing? Sure.
I think that they did take some investigative steps. It's debatable whether they should have taken more. I think to hear them tell it, they would say that they had to weigh the difference, the competing cost between what the reaction would have been if they had appeared to be putting their thumb on the scale in the middle of the campaign in an investigative way versus how do we stop Russia from doing what Russia was doing. And I think you can certainly argue whether they made the right value judgment there.
So is it appropriate then, though, for an outgoing administration to use these extensive resources of the CIA, NSA, and the Federal Bureau to conduct that assessment and publicly release that assessment, but not give the incoming, not consult with the incoming administration that that's what they were doing?
To my mind, the assessment is very peculiar in that, having worked in the government for a very long time, ordinarily the kind of an assessment that you're talking about there would be something that would take well over a year to do, certainly many months to do, even under circumstances where the information was readily available to investigators who had things like grand jury power in order to conduct the investigation. Seems to me that in this instance there was a rush to get that out within a matter of days and then roll it out while President Obama was still president.
All three of you have, at least Mr. Douglas and Mr. Anderson, have extensive careers with the FBI. Is it, I don't want to phrase the question, telegraph the answer, but troubling relationships within the hierarchy of the top FBI and their attitude toward this Trump administration and the conflict of interest that seems to have to most folks, have been in place. We're worried about a commercial transaction, openly commercial transaction that the Trump Tower would have been in Moscow. No way to hide that. There are no cutout entities being involved in between those. But yet folks at the top of the FBI, disdainful of the president, incoming president, conducting this investigation. Is that the standard for the FBI, or did you in the police yourselves better than to show those conflicts of interest among the folks that are leading investigations? Sure.
So, I mean, I think first of all, in any criminal or counterintelligence investigation period, it should be neutral. You should be looking at it a neutral playing field and developing the evidence to see where it leads you. And it should be able to stand on its own. So I think that is the way I worked it and was involved in cases for my whole career. As far as all the stuff that's gone on in the last couple of years, it's obviously very disconcerting about the different accusations that are taking place. I think that any of these investigations should have looked at specific facts and let the facts lead you where they go. It should not matter one iota if somebody's a Republican, a Democrat, or an independent.
Mr. Douglas, what was your experience?
Very, very similar to Bob's experience. You know, we were even talking earlier, we don't even know political preferences, and we've been friends for 2 decades. It's not, everybody comes into every position with a certain level of bias.
How did leadership fail? If that's the normal way of operating, how did it fail with respect to several of the top folks involved in the briefings of the campaign and other things going on? How did that happen? Where they had clear preferences for Trump getting beat, they had some sort of secret weapon. How did the system fail itself?
I have no idea. I can tell you, and we talked about this earlier, Pete Strzok was my chief of staff when I was the assistant director of counterintelligence. I never saw that side of what I saw in the emails and text messages. And those text messages and emails are unbelievably inappropriate. And I think the corrective action that was taken from that was just. But I can't answer your question, Congressman, because I didn't see it.
I understand. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You go back.
Mr. Quigley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for being here today. A story we know all so well. Beginning in the spring and summer of 2016, the GRU hacks Clinton campaign manager John Podesta's email, the D-Trip, the DNC. The GRU then systematically released the hacked emails through their online personas, Lucifer, DC Leaks, as well as WikiLeaks. The Russians appear to have timed the releases to maximize the effort to harm the Clinton campaign, to maximize the benefit to the Trump campaign, according to the report. We also know in the report there's a lot of evidence the Trump campaign knew about the WikiLeaks releases, welcomed them, strategized about how to amplify the message as part of the campaign. In fact, Donald Trump Jr. communicated directly with WikiLeaks in October of 2016 in an effort to use the hacked emails as to the campaign's advantage. The report indicates that the president himself knew about the planned dump of emails. Seems like an obvious question. From a counterintelligence perspective, what might this set of facts suggest about the relationship between the campaign and WikiLeaks? What might you worry about if a U.S. presidential campaign had foreknowledge of the release? More broadly, what counterintelligence risk exists when a campaign uses this information about a political opponent that was stolen and released by a foreign adversary? Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, sir. First of all, it troubles me that no one, if they did not communicate this type of information to some government agency just because of the facts laid out in the report and what you just brought up. I think also there needs to be a heightened sense of counterintelligence relationships as administrations move into the White House. I think in this administration, unlike other administrations that I've seen or been involved in preparing briefs for the president or whoever to read these to understand the concerns of it, I didn't see a lot of people within that, at least from the layman's eyes looking in from the outside, that even understood counterintelligence or understood that these threats were real. I think there should be a lot of that. The other point, and I think this is an important point, when Russia's releasing information through different, what I would call cutouts, i.e. WikiLeaks and other platforms, this is not unusual. In a lot of ways, they're doing that to start to sow the web so broad and wide. It's hard for us as an intelligence organization or group of intelligence organizations to start looking at who actually got that information, how did they get information, and why are they using it. That is done absolutely on purpose. It would not surprise me if there is a lot of other entities that the Russian intelligence services had teed up to even maybe displace more information that they never utilized. So going back to your original question, that's why it's so important. And individuals that are giving information, as Stephanie said, or being tasked and then receiving information, that is the initial way that you vet any asset or any person that you're targeting for a possible either unwitting asset or recruitment in the future. And those actions can take anywhere from a few weeks to years, depending how that organization is going to go after that person.
Ms. Douglas.
I'd just like to add, I think if you're a foreign power and you have a campaign or individuals who are willing to entertain receiving information that you are collecting for their benefit, I think that is a tacit approval of that action. And I think that's where we have to be careful of allowing people to communicate to either a foreign government, a foreign actor, that what they're doing, which is illegal, by hacking and collecting information and then releasing it, giving that kind of approval by a head nod or a suggestion or any kind of inference that it's okay is a tacit approval of that kind of behavior. And I think that puts us at greater risk.
Limited time I have. Mr. McCarthy, have you read the report in its entirety?
Well, I should say I've read all of Volume 1 because I knew that we were going to be discussing it today, and I've read most of Volume 2.
I appreciate that. You're ahead of most. You read then for about all the context that took place coming over from the Russian side. At any of those points, sir, putting yourself in the place of those who received those contacts, at any of those points, would you have called the FBI?
Well, I would
Yourself
have.
personally.
Would I have called the FBI?
Yes.
I could.
Crisis can happen unexpectedly to anyone. And though it may seem like a small barrier, a simple lock puts space between the thought and the trigger. Learn how securing your guns can help prevent suicide.
All right, everybody, here we are, UFC 266, T-Mobile Arena. It's time. Join the party. 2 championship fights. Diaz, Lawler. How can you miss this if you're a UFC fan? Because if you do, you're not.
Morales has never been finished. Perhaps that ends here.
Oh, that's getting so tight.
Fight the hands.
That's so tight.
That is it. How about JSP? Jonathan Pierce submits Omar Morales.
How bad do you really want it? Do you kind of want it, or do you really want it? And I really want it, so I feel like my performance spoke for itself.
Matthew Salinger turns the lights out on Sano. Oh my goodness.
How do you feel?
Oh my gosh, man. Like $1 million. Like $1 million. Worked a lot, really hard for this. And it just all comes down to 15 seconds sometimes, so that's the game.
I'm not much of a call-out person, but I'll play the reverse role. Any welterweights, give me a shout if you want to do a little dance.
For the winner by unanimous decision, Nick
We go, Jalen the Tarantula Turner. Nice work, buddy. Great to see. Congrats, man. You deserve all the success. Good shit, Jalen. Proud of you, buddy.
He gave me his back. I was like, you know what? He gave me his neck. Let me take his neck, see where this goes. I sucked up the rear naked choke, and that was it.
For the winner by unanimous decision, Talia Santos.
Goodness, what a right hand by Chris has got to get him out of here. That'll do it. Chris Hogan gets another knockout. They're going nuts in Vegas.
I am definitely one of the new contenders in the heavyweight division. The only other contender that I know of is Aspinall, and we'll meet at the top. Let the top echelon figure out whatever the hell they're figuring out. Me and Tom will fight for number 1 or number 2 contender spot. Best man win.
For the winner by unanimous decision, Dan the Hangman Hooker.
Yeah.
To be honest, I didn't get a call for this fight. This is not how this come together. Like, people really got the wrong end of the stick with this fight. It's not like the UFC called me up and they were like, hey, Dan, you want to fight Nasrat Haqparast on the prelims of UFC 266? There was nothing like this. I pretty much started just doing interviews and being like, I'm fighting on UFC 266. I have a voucher to get back home. Like, and you know, the UFC went out of their way. Sean Shelby went out of his way. He really did me a massive favor for putting this fight together on this card, because I just went to him and I was just like, I have to fight on this card. And if I haven't done it, it's because I've broken my back for the UFC over the years and fought everyone, that he went out of his way to make this fight happen. I feel like if it was anyone else, he would have just been like, there's no fight, there's no space, there's no one to fight, go away, I'll get you something else when something else comes up. But he made a fight where there was no fight. We found an opponent where there was no opponent. So that's why I take my hat off to Nasrat for stepping up to the plate.
Rice is just very sluggish, right, in everything. All of his actions are sluggish. It's over now.
He's not defending those strikes.
Now it's over, Peterson.
There's a warning from Keith Peterson, but again, not defending. That'll do it. 7 in a row for Merab Dvalishvili. Victory from the jaws of defeat tonight.
I'm out here trying to look good in these streets. You see me? I'm just trying to make the thing work. Up.
Well, I'm beyond proud. If anybody knows Merab, knows he's the heart of the team. He's such a sweetheart of a guy, and he's a warrior, and he's resilient. I'm telling you, not many people are going to survive what was just thrown at Merab right there. He was hurt, and he just never stopped moving. And it was a heart attack. I don't know. I was going to drop, but I knew that if he just survived it, that if he could come back. He's just, out of all the fighters I've ever worked with, he's just in the most insane shape. Like a session with him is like doing a session on the Versa Climber. It's insane. He has cardio for days. So if he weathered that storm, and we knew Marlon's going to be extremely dangerous, especially in the opening of the first round, But But as it went on, we knew it was going to be in Merab's favor, you know. So, again, it was a heart attack. He survived it. And not only that, he survived it, and he went back to put some damage in that round, you know. So I'm just beside myself right now. It's just all playing through my head again. I'm just so happy for my friend.
Did you know that the average adult has 5 to 20 pounds of toxic poop in their body at any given moment? Seems crazy, right? All that poop just sitting there, rotting away inside their intestines and colon. Is it any wonder that colon disease is on the rise with all this waste just sitting inside your body? Most of this waste contains chemicals that your body rejected, but due to certain issues like constipation, you couldn't flush it all out effectively.
Oh my goodness, she's hurt bad. She's hurt. Good. Final seconds of the round. This could be it. Jessica Andrade eliminates another contender. Man.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Could you take one?
Yeah.
Like her.
Amo vocês. Vou tirar minhas fotos. Ela tá tirando foto. Ela tá tirando as fotos.
For the winner by unanimous decision, Curtis Razor Blade.
Another day in paradise.
Right. So knee to the face, swollen, as you can see, swollen right eye.
You see the face of Murphy. She's not happy. She does not like the... Oh, big elbows. That'll do it. And still the undisputed best in the world. Get her another ruby for the belt.
How is your body?
Joe Rogan Podcast, check it out.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
Train by day, Joe Rogan Podcast by night.
Trump camp. She's unhappy with Trump. But it's fun. Florida's always kind of been a fun place. And I remember when we snuck into the Breakers buffet.
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Tim Dillon Show, audio-only episode. Direct your rage at the citizens of Baltimore, Maryland. I will be at Magooby's tomorrow night in Timonium, which is not even Baltimore. It's like a town outside of Baltimore. It's like a rest stop that came to town. It's not a town. I don't know what it is. But I'll be at Magooby's Laugh House, a very fun but unfortunately named comedy club. And in order to get there and do it on time, we were unable to use our temporary studio in Hollywood, California. And we are broadcasting from a room in a hotel. And I don't want to say which hotel, even though many of you will find that out anyway, because we had one crazy bitch already. This is our first stalker. Of course, it's a dumb cunt. It can't be some fucking hot dude who wants to fuck me to death. Some guy with a fucking hot, fat fetish. He just wants to beat the shit out of me with his cock and then blow our brains out. It can't be that. It's like some dumb yoga instructor who's fat. Well, good for me. Good for me. I have some dumb fat yoga instructor who's stalking me. Of course I would. Of course I couldn't even get like some hot fucking guy or girl. And this slob shows up at the hotel that I'm staying at. We came here to New York for a few days. I don't tell anyone when I'm coming here because I don't want to talk to them. And I don't want them to request me to do things I don't want to do. You know, people reach out to me, do you want to do my show? It's, you know, it's in a laundromat and we're, you know, raising money for it. No. Stay away from me. There are certain clubs where I miss the people at the clubs, but also I don't. You know? That's part of life. I do in theory and in my head and in my mind, but in reality I do not. So I don't even let them know I'm here, even though I would like to go to see some of those people, but I wouldn't. Do you know? I have this very complex relationship with that. I want to do it, but I don't. But I do. And I will, but I won't. So I'm here incognito. Nobody knows where I am. I'm just shuffling around. I did the Red Scare podcast with Anna Hashin and Dasha Nekrasova. Brilliant cultural critics. Hot bitches. I put up a photo with them, and you could tell a lot of my more intelligent fans are like, yo, this guy fucks women. He's fucking these bitches. And I'm like, okay, fair enough. Whatever. But I didn't really tell anyone I was here. I was here for 3 days. 3 days you can't get all the, you know. If I was here for 2 weeks, I'd tell people. But it's 3 days I'm in and out. We were going to do a sketch with Lil Sasquatch at Barstool Sports. We could not figure one out in time. He came over to the hotel. Him and Ben were writing, eating Sichuan, Chinese food, Sichuan. Really good. Spicy in the middle of the night, no good. I wake up at 3:30 in the morning to a phone call from the manager of the hotel, front desk, going, someone's here to see you. And I know this fat bitch is listening to this. And I'll tell you right now, you're lucky I didn't walk down into the lobby and beat the living shit out of you. Because that's the next thing I will do. You fat bitch. Seriously. Okay? I'm staying at the same hotel with Harry and Meghan Markle. Okay? My friends. Who I thought when the phone rang at 3:30 in the morning, I said, well, this is the end of me. Because they called in a favor. That's what I thought. I thought they called in a favor, and like a guy dressed up like a Postmates delivery guy was going to come in here and put a blow dart in my neck. Okay? Because, you know, Meghan Markle heard what I've said and felt some sort of way. So those two intellectual heavyweights are also in the hotel. Along with every other diplomat in New York. Everybody's got Havana syndrome here. Nobody, you know, forks are sticking to people's heads. I'm just trying to get the fucking mustard sauce with the filet of buff. And this fat slut whore pig walks in here, waddles her ass in here, and maybe she thought I had food, but she called, they called me at 2:30 in the morning. They go, Cameron Herron wants to see you. Somebody's down here to see you. I said, who? They said, Cameron Herron. Now, Cameron Herron is a poor kid who murdered a woman with his car and her baby. I talked about it 2 episodes, a month ago? I don't know.
Yeah, about 5 or 6
There's
episodes
a kid in Tampa, good looking, was on TikTok. Everybody was like, he's too hot to go to jail. They put him in jail. You know, it's a rough situation, okay? I tried to make light of it, whatever. It is what it is. He's getting married, he's fine. He's going to be in jail, but he's doing better than most people I know. 24-year jail sentence, most people I know not doing as well as him. Okay? So I hang up the phone. Now I'm terrified. Cameron Herron. I don't know what's going on. Of course, I think Meghan and Harry are drunk and playing games. And that's literally for a minute, because you got to remember, it's the middle of the night. It's the middle of the night, and this is what I think. I think that Harry and Meghan, because they're like maybe in the penthouse. I don't know. The penthouse, $75,000 a night. Maybe they're not springing for that. Who's paying for this, by the way? Diana left him money, so he's, spending that, and he has a stipend or whatever. I think the royals are kind of like, hush, hush, just keeping it. You know what I mean? You can't have them staying at a Clarion. You know what I mean? Or you should see the hotel Ben's at. God. I mean, a horror. They want stalkers in that hotel, that anyone comes in. So I think, I don't know what's going on. I said, Harry and Meghan are playing games now, and they're calling me in the middle of the night, and they're trying to give me Havana syndrome. Explain what Havana syndrome is, please, because there's people that listen to this show who don't have any idea where they are. So explain to them.
So about 140 people have got this so far in like Cuba, in the U.S., and a couple other places. And basically it's
primarily CIA agents are getting this, right?
That's correct.
This isn't something we don't think is going to be widely dispersed through the population.
No. I want to read the actual list of symptoms, but it is pretty crazy. A lot of people report that they only feel the symptoms in their hotel room. And by the way, they don't know how they get this because it's a direct energy weapon. It's through like microwave, what would you call that, Tim? Microwave...
waves?
Microwaves, I guess. Like, not through an
radiation?
Actual... Yeah.
Radiation?
Yeah.
He's scaring me about this whole fucking... The last couple of days talking about we all going to get Havana syndrome.
Well, yeah, as soon as I walked in the hotel, this is the last place I'd want to be if I wanted to get Havana syndrome.
Jamie Dimon's outside. You're not going to give anyone fucking Havana syndrome. They're going to fuck him up?
He's still out there, by the way. I just walked by him.
Of course he is. What's he going to do? Where's he going? Fucking out there drinking wine. You think, where's our friends? All of our unemployed friends at the Many Saints in Newark. Spending their last $12 watching a movie.
So they suspect that microwaves are the main suspect of this.
Microwaves?
Microwaves, yeah. That's what they're saying.
We're not staying in a hotel with microwaves. How does this work? Because
they
people
don't really
are getting
know.
sick. People are getting a little sick of the CIA's act. So the CIA comes into the country and starts playing games, and now these countries are fighting back using microwaves.
Yeah.
Well, it's hard to get mad at that.
So like you'll be sitting in your room and all of a sudden it feels like you're, when you roll the windows down in the back seat.
I do.
That'll happen for like 30 minutes to like an hour. You have nausea, headaches, just weird unexplained symptoms. You don't know how you got it, and a lot of people think this is Russian intelligence doing this.
Okay.
So that's
well, Ben terrified me. He goes, "We're all going to get Havana syndrome here."
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, we don't have Havana syndrome. I have Cuban sandwich syndrome because I got a fat girl in the lobby. She shows up at 4 o'clock in the morning, 3:30, and she gives this fake name, Cameron Herron. Then they call me back. I said, "I don't know who. I'm not entertaining guests. I'm asleep." I said a lot. I go, "It's 3:30 in the morning. What are we doing?" I hang the phone up. I go use the bathroom. They call back. They go, "We're kidding. She was using a fake name. She said it was a joke. Here's her real name." I said, "I don't know who this is. I don't know who this person is. I don't want her here." The next day, today, we're recording this when?
Today, Wednesday, September 22nd.
Wednesday, September 22nd. So if anything happens between now and, when we release this Saturday, just know that we're recording it Wednesday, There's like a nuclear attack that we don't address. It's also not as important as this to me, unless it happens to me, unless I'm vaporized, which, again, I wouldn't be able to address it anyway. But this woman then calls back and gives her real name, and I go, "I don't know her." Today, she's in the lobby again, and we're on Long Island, and I get a phone call that this woman is in the thing again, and I explain to the people at this hotel, which is the hotel that Meghan and Harry stay at. It's the Best Western in Times Square. Okay? It's where I stay when I come to New York. I stay at the Best Western.
Yeah.
With Meghan and Harry. So Meghan Markle, Harry, me, the diplomats, Havana syndrome, Jamie Dimon, and this fat whore. are all here together trying to just have a fucking a souffle before the end. Okay? That's what this area of New York City is called, the Upper East Side. It's let's do a little wine and cheese before the end. The door is slamming shut on the American Century, but before it does, let's sneak a little Cabernet in there and a little cheese. That's all. That's all we're asking for, okay? No talk of revolution here. The quieted, muted tones of a group of people accepting the ephemeral nature of the civilization that they've built, you know, with all its problems. Anyway, so this Goliath beast of a woman who like does yoga, can you imagine? Yoga's a real fat thing, isn't it? You just sit around and like put your leg in the air. So that's what it is, right? Isn't yoga you just like drink smoothies and sit on your ass?
I guess you could be really fat and still do it.
But isn't it just learning how to fart and stuff? I haven't really done much of it, but I imagine that's the majority of it is learning how to like open your body so that you can pass gas, which I imagine is what this woman does. So Piglet shows up again. I tell him, I said, beat her up. I tell them on the phone, I said, hit her.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like fuck her up. Like, I hate the cops. I don't want to get the cops involved. But I'm like, you got a bunch of Secret Service. You got some ex-intelligence people. Just smack her around. You know, put the head in the toilet. You know what I mean? Like, just put hands on her. Mm-hmm. I literally said to the guy, why don't you put some hands on her? You do it like Casino. Open the door with her head. I had no problem bumping into my fans ever. I go, hey, what's up? Let's take a photo, whatever. Don't fucking wake me up at 4 o'clock in the morning, you fat bitch. So I said, listen, open the door with her head, put her head in the toilet, kick her, a couple of, body shots to the kidneys, fuck her up. Fuck her up. You obviously legally can't do that. I offered to pay extra for them to rough her up. I said, Ray, will you rough her up? Rough her up a little bit. But they threw her out, took her name. She can't come in now without trespassing. But this is the level we're at now. Now I got to check in every hotel. Unregistered guest.
She tried to call me on Instagram.
She tried to call Ben. Mm-hmm. Imagine stalking Ben. She tried to call Ben on Instagram. What do you think she would have said?
I don't know. She sent me a message. I was going to show you because I saw it on the way over here.
Get the message out.
Because this is interesting. She said something about you being in New York. She said, I don't know why he's here. I'm going to read it exactly, though, and then I'm going to look.
This is payback, because I've always said stalkers are funny, because they are. Mm-hmm. You know, like whenever somebody says, I'm trying to protect Taylor Swift.
Look at that.
Yeah, so this woman goes, why is he here? I don't understand what's going on.
And missed call on Instagram. Yeah.
Yeah, she's a little terrifying.
Mm.
Why is he here? I don't understand what's going on.
And it looks like she sent me
I'm here to punch you in the face. That's why I'm here. But this is what's going on. We got a psychopath here. Imagine stalking me. It's the lowest level. I mean, what a horror. What an embarrassment. To stalk me? Stalking a podcaster? Mark Maron told us he has a stalker. She just like hangs outside of his house.
She leaves oils on his porch.
Yeah, and the cops go, we can't really do much.
Yeah.
The cops said to Maron, the cops go, yeah, man, she's out there. He goes, I know. She's out there. He goes, yeah, she's like out there. Yeah, she's also literally out there. But you can't do much. You don't have a lot of legal rights to stop these people from stalking you. I just thought because we're in a really nice hotel with a bunch of fucking spooks and, intel guys here that we could, I don't know, give her the Havana syndrome. Put her head in the microwave. What's the problem here? I'm paying a lot of money here. I'm paying a good amount of money. Put her head in the fucking microwave. Kick her in the ass and get her out of here. You think Sebastian Maniscalco has stalkers? Like they call him up, and they're like, "Hey, somebody's here." She's like, "Hey, my Jesus fucker, I know. What are you doing? What are you doing with these? I'm telling you right now, I got stalkers. Stalkers? People are trying to kill me. There are people who are stalking me. They show up to my hotel. I go, what are you doing? Are you embarrassed? They be stalking me? Are you crazy? You're a stalker? But, I think I handled it maturely. I told him, fuck her up.
Yep.
But this is a psychotic individual that would send a message and say, why is he here? I don't understand what's going on. Bitch, what do you mean what's going on? I'm fucking freely traveling as a citizen of the United States of America. What do you mean what's going on? That means someone's really sick. That's a sick person. Got to keep tabs on him. I'll stalk her. Like, I'll have people stalk her, too. I got a lot of friends without jobs. They'll sit outside your house. I got a lot of people that don't have shit to do, by the way. I'll put them on a salary. They can sit around and ask you why you go where you go. But it's one of those things when you get known a little bit, you're going to every now and then get a psycho.
Yeah.
You know?
The I don't understand what's going on. It's almost like, oh, but Tim isn't continuing on with the plan. He's not supposed to be here right now. Almost like in her head, like she's like, he's not supposed to be here. He's supposed to be in X, Y, or Z, fulfilling the prophecy of whatever. Like almost a QAnon type thing. Like, why would she say, I don't understand what's going on?
Well, because sometimes in these people's heads, they're in like some type of relationship with you. That they don't understand that you do a show that they listen to. They think you're literally talking to them. And now, bitch, I am. But they think I'm literally talking to them. I will go down to the Bronx right now and spread a lot of money around. I will have teenagers stomp you out in front of your apartment. You understand? Break your rib cage. This is not about violence against women. It's about violence against woman. W-M-A-N. Specific. But no, maybe these people are in a relationship with you in their mind. Do they think there's layers to some? I don't understand, but it's insanely inappropriate to show up at somebody's hotel room and demand to see them at 3:30 in the morning. And you told your wife, Ben's wife was all spooked.
Yeah. Yeah,
she was scared. She was a little scared. She was scared that the woman wasn't going to kill me. She was scared that the woman was thrown out. Then now that's another plan that she's hatched. It's not going to go anywhere. They know they're in the will now, so everything's like, you know. Well, listen, I mean, you know, this is part of what we're going to have to deal with, I guess, as the show gets more popular. People are, why are you looking disturbed? What are you looking at?
I'm seeing the previous message she sent me.
What is it?
It says, hey, Paulie, I hope you're well. Since you chuds don't watch makeup tutorials, here it's the same as my conspiracy or scandal, follow the money. Here's a link to the evolution of Morphe. Has been linked to everyone in the beauty community who has had controversy the last 2 years.
Yeah, Morphe is like some, it's like a makeup brand that was involved with James Charles.
That's what it seems, yeah. This chick's takes on Dobrik are quite good too. So, and she called me Paulie for some reason.
Yeah. Is there any chance this is Gabby Petito? Would Gabby Petito fake her own death, gain weight, and then stalk me? We covered the whole Gabby Petito thing on Patreon. I will say this. I'll address the tweet that people are getting angry about. Don't go to national parks, which I think is... I think that's... And people go, no, well, you're unhealthy and fat, and that's why you don't like national parks. You go, no, I'm not a murderer. That's why I don't like them. They seem to be frequented by killers. Lots of people that murder other people hang out there. A lot of people disappear in national parks. I had somebody on the Patreon who wrote an entire book about it.
John Billman.
Yeah, and what is the book called?
Let me pull that up.
I love how he has the name of the guy, but not the name of the book. You would think, I thought for a minute he pulled up the name of the book, but he somehow has the name of the guy and not the name of the book. It's like an amazing... Well, hey, any problems with the episode? It's Havana Syndrome.
The cold vanish.
The cold vanish.
Yeah.
People go out for like a light jog and they're gone.
Gone.
And then, you know, you could keep blaming mountain lions and bears, but let's be honest. I think there's something else going on. I don't know what it is, and I don't want to find out. I'm just saying it's not exactly the, safest place to be. And people are like, you're victim blaming, you're trying to make a joke out of this. And I'm like, hey, do we need a trial? Yes. We explain it on the bonus episode. We need a trial to get us out of where we're at with COVID. everything, people are still talking about TikTok. It's like, that should be over already. COVID should be over already. We're living in a hangover right now of news that should be over already. This should have been flushed down the toilet already. The old turlet. But we're just circling the train here, and we need an O.J. Simpson style. It'll never be O.J., but something good, juicy, that we could sink our teeth into to help us get over this hump. Blue Chew is a unique online service that delivers the same active ingredients as Viagra and Cialis, but in chewable tablets at a fraction of the cost. Imagine that. You can take them anytime, day or night, so you can plan ahead or be ready whenever an opportunity arises. The process is simple. Sign up at BlueChew.com. Consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within days. The best part, it's all done online. No visits to the doctor's office, no awkward conversations, and no waiting in line at the pharmacy. Blue Chew's tablets are made in the USA and prepared and shipped direct to your door in a discreet package. With Blue Chew, everybody is excited to see the postman. BlueChew.com, we've got a special deal for our listeners. Try Blue Chew free when you use promo code TD at checkout. That is absolutely free. Just pay $5 shipping. Visit BlueChew.com for more details and important safety information. Again, try it absolutely free. Just pay shipping when you use promo code TD at checkout. And it's a great way to support the podcast. We thank Blue Chew for sponsoring the podcast. Keeps hair loss is great. I have a friend that's using it, and he's thrilled. 2 out of 3 men will experience some form of hair loss by the time they're 35. More than 50 million men in the U.S. suffer from male pattern baldness. There are only 2 FDA-approved medications that can prevent hair loss. Keeps offers both. It's a simple, stress-free way to keep your hair. Convenient virtual doctor consultations and medications delivered straight to your door every 3 months, so you don't have to leave your home. Low-cost treatment start at just $10 per month, and Keeps offers generic versions, discreet packaging, and proven results. Keeps has more 5-star reviews than any of its competitors. Prevention is key. Treatments can take 4 to 6 months to see results, so you want to act fast. This is the way to keep your own hair. It is the most natural way to fight baldness. So if you're ready to take action, prevent hair loss, go to KEEPS.com/Tim Dillon to receive your first month of treatment for free. That's KEEPS.com/Tim Dillon. I'm telling you, you're not going to regret it.